مين في يفتح يتأكد إذا شالك.
بوينتر وينه؟
يلا بس نبلش.
هي أنا البوينتر.
بس شاشة الكاميرا مين يفتح يتأكد.
يلا. لا صباح. تعالوا للأمام، تعالوا. والحمد لله أنتوا بس 10. مو الغياب أنا راح أرفعه اليوم لله، وما تنحرمون من الامتحان. مش أنتوا طبعا، أنا مش أنتوا، دفنتلي مش أنتوا. اللي ما جاي هاليوم ينحرم من الامتحان طبعا.
يعني هيك بس احنا المنقل
خلاص، اللي ما جاي هاليوم ينحرم من الامتحان
كمان.
اوكي.
مش ظاهر لسه.
بس
هاي سني.
دخلتي؟ ايوه شو
مش ظاهر الميتنج عندهم.
ليش مش ظاهر؟ بس طالع، ما دام طالع احمر.
هاي شير هيك. طيب
لا مش ظاهر لانه كان لازم تكون
هسه ظهر.
طيب هسه ظاهر. اي لان احمر، شايفه الاحمر.
آه.
من يطلع احمر معناها يظهر عندهم.
تمام. هاي
يلا اوكي. الحمد لله. السلام عليكم. الريكورد اوريدي، الريكورد مش شغال وياكم. اوكي.
هيك.
لا ضيعتي.
هاي الليزر شغال.
اوكي. طبعا كل عام وانتم بخير. وعن جد عن جد عن جد، العيد مش هذا. العيد لما تتخرجوا كونوا على ثقة، ما في أحلى من التخرج أبدا. لا عيد، لا جواز، لا بردي، ولا أول ولا تالي، أبدا أبدا. هلا أنت مبتسمة، صدقيني لما تتخرجين الدنيا كلها ما بتسعك. فعيدكم تخرجكم. أوكي. فإن شاء الله تكونوا قضيتوا أيام كويسة بالعيد. at the same time لا تنسوا مستقبلكم. anyhow. أوكي خلينا نكمل. بعرف تمام هي مكتوبة 8 بس ما بتذكر أنا المحاضرة. لا أنا بالنسبة لي okay. Anyhow, you remember we said you at the workplace we have so many exposure, whether biological, physical, psychological, we already mentioned this, and there is a chemical exposure in any industry. Okay. It's well-known fact that it's hardly to know that there is no industry without using chemical substances. كل المعامل، كل everywhere there is a chemical exposure. There is a chemical that are used whether as protecting or as a raw material. So there is hardly any industry which does not make use of a chemical. The chemical hazards are on increasing. It's not only hardly, but also increasing day by day from any source. Okay, with the introduction of a new and complex material, whether it is a raw material or as a byproduct of any industry or any material. So other industry use the substances in a production of durable and non-durable goods. So there is always an exposure of the worker regarding the chemical hazard. The ill effect, you know it. The ill effect of the chemical exposure as any other substances, it depends on the duration of exposure, definitely, you know it. And also on the quantity of exposure in addition to the individual susceptibility. This is well-known fact in all other exposure. Sorry. معلش ما في. هذا بدي يروح متى يروح؟ أيوه thank you. Okay. So the effect of the chemical exposure act in three ways, either locally, okay, that is on the skin or any other, or by inhalation or by ingestion. Regarding inhalation, it affects by dust, okay, it affects as a gases or as a material substances. And ingestion also, it affected. Local exposure, as we said, it is affect the skin definitely, dermatitis, eczema, ulcer, or any other, or even cancer. Okay. Preliminarily, there is an irritation of the skin, and then this irritation, there may be allergic condition of the skin, definitely no. This is locally. And some of the substance will absorb through the skin, and then it will affect on systematic effect. And their effect will be cause systematic effect as any TNT and another material. So this is the effect on the, regarding the dust, there is something important in the occupational disease regarding the dust. The dust are finely or very, very tiny, very small particle, ranging its size between 0.1 and 150 micron. It's very small. Depending on the size, the effect will be different. We will see later on. They are released into atmosphere during crushing, definitely you know it, during grading, during braiding, during loading or uploading. This is well-known fact. Dust are produced in a number of industry. Many industry, they produce a dust that will affect the health of the human being, I mean the worker definitely, in the mines, in the foundry, in the quarry. There is a crushing of the stone, pottery and textile and so many other industry. So in this industry there is a production of dust, which is a very, very small particle that will affect the health of the worker. Dust particle larger than 10 micron, what will happen? Settle down from the air because it's big. So it will settle down. While rapidly, while smaller than 1, it will affect, suspend in the air, and it will affect the health of the human being. Also, depending on the size, there will be the effect will differ accordingly, we will see. Particles smaller than 5 micron are directly inhaled in the lung. Okay, and then it will produce some diseases. We will see later on in detail. Okay. So this particle, when inspired, okay, they call it respirable dust when it is small. Okay. But also we will discuss the size definitely. It's mainly those particles responsible for the pneumoconiosis. We call it pneumoconiosis. So the dust had been classified into inorganic and organic dust. And we have soluble and insoluble dust. Each one of these have its own effect, differ from the other. The inorganic dust are silica, asbestos, and so any other coal. And the organic, we have cotton, and we have another. The soluble of course, most of these, actually both of them, they causes pneumoconiosis, but mostly the inorganic. And also not all are inorganic, but the soluble. The soluble dissolves slowly and enters the stomach circulation, and then it will eliminate it from the body. The insoluble is stay permanently in the lung, so it will cause pneumoconiosis. So the inorganic as well as insoluble, both of them are mostly responsible for the pneumoconiosis. Gases, sir, there is so many gases. We are just to mention for you. Mostly we are not going to discuss these because there is no time, but regarding pneumoconiosis, yes. There is a simple gases, there is asphyxiating gases, and there is anesthetic gases. All these will affect it, will be exposed during the at the workplace during the work and causing different. So there is another thing which is the metal. Yes, most probably we are going to discuss something about the metal. It's a large number of metals and their components are used throughout the industries. Example of this, the chief model of entry is from inhalation. So you can see most of the gas or most of the occupation, chemical occupation exposure is mostly about through inhalation. Inhalation, and also we have gases that through ingestion. The industrial physician should be aware of the toxic effect of the lead and mercury. This is the most important two things. And also we are going to discuss, inshallah, those both of them. There is another, but mostly we are going to concentrate because there is no time. Of course, as any other, the ill effect of the metal, it depends on the duration of exposure, definitely, and the dose of the concentration. The difference between the metal and the pneumoconiosis is that when we remove the patient from the area that he had been exposed to, he will restore his health. But regarding the pneumoconiosis, no. Even if you remove him, he will never restore his health. So the effect will be continued for a long time. Okay. So this is the difference between. The other things is that through ingestion, as we said, occupational disease may also restart from ingestion. How it could happen? Usually these substances are either swollen in very minor or through contaminated metals, through contaminated hand or during cigarette smoking. So these are the effects occurs. We will see how it occurs during cigarette pursuits. Much of ingested material is excreted, okay, via urination or defecation or even via skin. We will see. Okay. Only small proportion may reach the general blood circulation and it will be accumulated. That's why the effect is depending on the concentration and on the duration and accumulation of these ingested material. So Now, disease is due to the chemical, generally, the gases we have already we mentioned. Okay, these are causing gases poisoning. We already inorganic dust, and we have organic. Okay, just now we mentioned it. We are going, inshallah, to discuss silicosis, silica and asbestos. If there is a time, we will also discuss anthracosis if there is a time. Organic, we have a cotton dust, but you have to know it, please. إذا جبناكم تعمل قولوا ما شرحناها بس لا it's already mentioned. Okay, can fiber, bicazosis, cotton, bizzinosis. We have tobacco. We have so many other. So bizzinosis for the cotton, tobaccosis for the tobacco, and farmer lung for the coal. We have the metal and their product already. We mentioned this is just summarizing. We have toxic hazard from the lead and mercury. That's why I put it in a red. It means we are going, inshallah, to discuss it. And there is so many other. There is no time to discuss that. Chemical, we have acid, alkaline, and pesticides, and so many others. Solvent, carbon, and benzone, and many other substances. All these are, or there is another metal that in which the worker being exposed to. But what we are going to discuss is pneumoconiosis. So now you know that pneumoconiosis, it occurs either as organic or inorganic exposure, definitely. And mostly it is insoluble. Okay. So what we are going to discuss in pneumoconiosis, we are going to give definition, pathogenesis type, and some of the pneumoconiosis, as I mentioned, we are going to discuss silicosis, asbestosis, and anthracosis if there is a time. And then preventive measure. So what's pneumoconiosis? You remember we said depending on the size of the particle of the chemical in the air. So dust within the size of 1 to 5 micron will cause pneumoconiosis. Okay? It's a health hazard. Producing after variable period of exposure a lung disease that called pneumoconiosis. So of course, this particle will cause inflammation. After an inflammation, there is fibrosis. After fibrosis, there is changing in the structure of the lung and the function, definitely. This is just very brief. Okay, so inhalation of dust particle size 1 to 5 micron, it will be a health hazard that causes pneumoconiosis. Okay, this pneumoconiosis, which may gradually cripple or it may be reduce the working capacity of the person, of the worker, and causing it due to the lung fibrosis and other complications. So what's the definition? Before definition, what's pneumo? Pneumoconiosis, it came from the Greek word. Pneumo, it means air. Coniosis, it means dust. So it is dust, or dusty air. The International Labour Organization, ILO, you know it, define pneumoconiosis as. There is so many definitions, but all are the same, almost. What's the definition? Accumulation of dust, definitely, because it's insoluble. So it will accumulate it inside the lung. Accumulation of dust and the tissue reaction toward this accumulation. So it is accumulation of dust in the lung and tissue reaction to the presence or toward this accumulation toward this dust. It's also can define, it is not neoplastic, of course, not neoplastic lung. inhalation of mineral or organic. Just now we said either organic or inorganic substances result in alteration of the structure of the lung as well as alteration in the function of the lung. So it is deposition of the dust and lung reaction toward this dust. So it is deposition and reaction of the lung toward this dust. Okay, actually that pathogenic changes that occur as a result of entrance of this dust, the distribution of the dust region is always follow the lymphatic pathway of the lung. So it's around the lymphatic pathway in the lung. And so we will see how it occurs, inshallah. For the pathogenesis, there should be three essential factors for the development of pneumoconiosis. Of course, what are these developments? I am sure that you are knowing now. Exposure to specific substances. Definitely. There should be exposure to the specific substances, either cool, okay. We have coal, we have silica, we have asbestos, we have iron, so many other. But the effect will differ from one to the other. I mean, the serious effect. Coal is very minor effect comparing to the silica and asbestos. So the coal appear relatively inert, but very minor effect, and might accumulated in a considerable amount and causing minimal tissue changes. But silica and asbestos is very serious condition. It's very, very serious condition. So the first factor should be exposure, definitely. The particle appropriate size. We said it should be from 1 to 5 micron. If it is less than 1, the effect is less. If it's more than 5, the effect will be not. And also definitely duration of exposure. Particularly most of them, their effect will be after a long period of time. Minimum 10 years. We will discuss in some area. There is in some area that the effect will occur within a month. We will see. Okay, but usually 10 years and above. That's why you remember from the beginning, we said we have to ask the person. Very good, thank you. العيد مأثر عليها. عاملها شطورة. We have to ask about not only the current occupation, but about the previous history. Or even if he retired, we have to ask him about the previous occupation. So because it affects very little. So, from occupational health point of view, the dust classified according to its size into 3 types. Okay. We have inhaled dust, finished. Okay. When the size is 6 to 25, so it's more than 5. Inhalable. It's the one which enters the body, but it's trapped by the upper respiratory, whether by natural defense of the body, so it will expel outside. It will not affect our lung. So it's inhalable, size 6 to 25 micron. Respirable, the size is 1 to 5. This one have a bad effect. Okay, because it will respirable. So particles that small enough to penetrate the nose and the upper respiratory and beyond the body natural defense mechanism, and will remain in the lung, accumulated in the lung. So it will cause lung tissue reaction, retained or maintained in the lung. Its size 1 to 5 micron. When the size is less than 1, so this exhale out can go out, so it cannot stay inside. Although there is some cases, yes, even if it is 0.5, it will affect. We will see later. So these are classification of the dust from occupational point of view. Classified into 3 according to its size. Okay. So this is the diagram just now. According to the size, either in the upper respiratory, it will never enter, but here it will enter and accumulate it in the lung type. Okay, the hazardous effect of the dust on the lung depend upon number of factors, definitely. Just now we see. Chemical composition. We see the iron is not like that of the silica or asbestos. So the definition, composition, sorry. Finance, how small it is, how big it is. So definitely this is also important. Concentration in the dust. So we will see later on when the concentration is high. Just now I told you, maybe within a month it will give the effect. So concentration in the dust, period of exposure, definitely the longer the more. And health status of the person, susceptibility or presence of other disease like TB, smoking, accelerated. So, therefore, the threshold limit of the value for different dust is different. كل واحد إلى its threshold. We will see it later. In addition to the toxic effect of the dust, it's not only that, particularly with the silica, and also asbestos, the person will be susceptible to the disease like TB. Or on the other side, if he is TB, he is more susceptible for silica. But mostly, they will be superimposed infection by another infection like TB if he is exposed to silica particularly or some other. So, still we are in the pneumoconiosis. Pneumoconiosis classified, okay, may be caused by inhalation of organic or organic and inorganic. We already mentioned classified into 3, either as a result of organic or inorganic. So classification of pneumoconiosis on 2 areas, according to the effect and according to the particle that causing the dust that causing the pneumoconiosis. According to the dust, we have inorganic, organic. Of course, in inorganic, we have coal, silica, asbestos, iron. Each one of these, will cause certain disease. Anthracosis for the coal, silicosis, asbestosis, and siderosis. For the organic, we have gun fiber, bigososis, we have cotton, zinosis, and tobacco, and we have so many other. These are organic and these are inorganic. Mostly we are just to discuss the organic, because there is no time. Other classification, as just I mentioned, that we classified into minor, major, and benign. Major pneumoconiosis, minor pneumoconiosis, and benign pneumoconiosis, depending on the fibrosis that will occur. We will discuss. Of course, each one differs from one to the other. Okay, major pneumoconiosis, silicosis, and asbestosis and anthracosis. These are causes. Just now we see it's very serious. While siderosis from the iron, it is benign. Minor, we have bichisosis and byssinosis. These are organic. So what are these? Major, minor, and benign pneumoconiosis. Let us see what are these. We said according to the fibrotic or fibrosis of the lung. Let us see one by one. Started by benign. Ahsan. There is no any reaction of the lung. So I just enter my lung, but there is no reaction. In another word, when there is no reaction, no fibrosis. When there is no fibrosis, no change in the structure of the lung. And also there is no change in function of the lung. So that's why it is benign. So there is no any reaction in the lung, but there is deposition. Yes, so we can see it by X-ray. There is deposition, dust deposition cast, but shown by X-ray in the lung. There is no fibrosis, already we mentioned, as there is no disturbance in the lung function or the structure of the lung. So it can result from where? From inhalation of the iron. So the iron is benign. Benign, of course, you know, iron causing siderosis, tin dust, stenosis, calcium, calcosis. They are characterized by, already you mentioned, there is presence of small round dense opacity by chest X-ray. We see small round opacity in the lung, and there is no change in the structure of the lung. Okay. The deposition in the lung disappears when exposure is discontinued. So when I remove the patient from the area, this opacity will be disappear. That's why it is benign, because no change in the function. Coming to the minor, so you can see from its name. Coming to the minor, okay, there is inhalation of some dust result from minor fibrosis from its name. So from the beginning, we say classification depending on the fibrosis. So minor fibrosis of the lung. There is minimum fibrosis of the lung without interference in the architecture or in the function. So just fibrosis. Still, it is minor. And also no change in the function. These are mica, pneumoconiosis, choline pneumoconiosis. So these are minor. Coming to the major. Okay. Major, from its name, related to the severity of exposure, there is large lesion. There is a fibrosis. There is fibrosis, major fibrosis. Plus, there is interference of the lung architecture. Look at the lung, how it had been changed, its architecture, and the function of the lung will be affected. There is a collapse of the lung, and there is later on emphysema will occur. So there is emphysema. Of course, example is silicosis, asbestosis, and anthracosis. These are the major. So these are classification of the شايفين شو قصيرة؟ Inshallah, in the next lecture we will discuss silicosis and asbestosis, but it will be longer than this. Okay, any question? Is it easy?
أخذنا زي الأرأس.
إذا ما في سؤال بس شكرا. سوري. باي ذا واي سكر يعني المرة الجاية إن شاء الله